It's true, I had $125,000 of student loan debt, and I am actively paying it off as fast as I possibly can. I'm Sandra, I'm a full-time occupational therapist, and my student loan debt is from paying for tuition for my doctorate degree in occupational therapy. I went to a private institution and had about $50,000 in scholarships. I supported myself by working through school and only took loans to pay for tuition. My loans are all federal loans, and in this video I'm going to talk about my plan to pay them off, why I'm executing that plan, a few things to consider if you are also considering taking on debt or actively paying off debt, and then some tips I have for throwing extra money towards your student loans. So basically, this is my story when it comes to my student debt, and I am sharing it all with you. I have also been sharing monthly updates on my budget and student loans, and overall just trying to add a little financial transparency from a completely normal person paying off a mountain of debt. So I went to grad school knowing that I was gonna have to take out loans to pay for tuition, but I was able to do this because I didn't have any loans from undergrad, because I went to a Jesuit university and my mom works at a Jesuit university. There were only 2 spots at my university, and I was chosen for one of the scholarships to be supported in this like tuition exchange for undergrad. But this was a huge privilege because I didn't have any student loans from undergrad. So I graduated undergrad completely debt free. I had known that I wanted to go into rehab. I originally wanted to go to PT school starting like sophomore year of high school. That journey is on my channel. So this was like a long founded goal of mine. So I went directly into OT school after college. I didn't take a gap year. I did pay a chunk of my tuition my first year out of pocket. I think I paid about $9,000. And then I continued to work. My most consistent jobs through OT school were that I was a nanny, and then I also worked for the university that I went to's admissions department, and I was a graduate assistant for them. So those were my 2 most like consistent jobs. And that allowed me to pay for my cost of living. And then I did have one summer where I was working like 90 hours a week and also going to school. That summer I was able to save up about $7,000. I now have as my emergency fund, which is $10,000. So I funded my emergency fund essentially through school. So when I graduated, I just had a fully funded emergency fund. I graduated in May of 2024, and then I took my boards and was working by the end of June of 2024. I started PRN, which if you watch my kind of budgeting videos, you'll know that I initially wanted my budget to be offset a month because I was going to be PRN, which means that I was going to be working as needed. So I was going to have a slightly variable income. So I wanted the money that I made, for example, in June to pay for my July expenses so that in July I knew how much I had to spend. And then I ended up getting hired on full time at the start of August, which was a lot quicker of a time frame than I wanted. So the benefits of being PRN is that you get paid more hourly. And so I was making more money June and July. But the benefit, of course, of being full time is you get things like benefits and consistent income. And for us, it was important that I had benefits because he's self-employed. So he does not have healthcare and was paying for marketplace insurance. Even though I was working essentially full-time hours as a PRN employee, I wanted to move into a full-time role where I could provide the health benefits, and then also my work has a 401k match and student loan assistance of $200 a month, and those additional benefits matched my long-term goals. I've talked about this a little bit, I have friends that are working higher paying jobs than I have, but my job has pretty good work-life balance. I'm paid hourly, so I have to leave at 40 hours. Our productivity, which is a big deal in the therapy world, is very manageable, where I'm still busy. I don't feel like I'm drowning all day every day. I feel like I'm drowning because I'm a new grad OT, but not because I'm not able to meet productivity standards. So it was important to me to have this kind of balance, and the community of therapists is super supportive, and I just feel like generally very supported in my role. So it's a really good fit for me, so I was willing to take a pay cut. I make about $75,000 a year, which ends up being about $4,000 in take-home pay every single month. I knew going into school that I was gonna have loans, and so going in, I made a plan for how I was gonna aggressively pay them off. I want to pay my loans off as quickly as possible. I do work for a nonprofit hospital, so I do qualify for public student loan forgiveness, but I don't want to spend 10 years tied to a job, much less a full-time job. That does not align with the life that I want to have. And like right now, I could see myself being happy at this hospital, but I don't want to work full-time for 10 years. I want to build financial freedom in other ways. I'm choosing the route of paying off my loans aggressively rather than opting for loan forgiveness. I also took these loans on anticipating that I was going to pay them off. So any forgiveness I get is like a benefit, but I honestly don't want to work for 10 years. I'll be 35 in 10 years. That's still very young. But if I want a family, I probably want it before I'm 35, and I don't want to be working full-time if I have a family. I want financial freedom before then, and I have plans to get there. And saying this is all very privileged, right? Like, I am in a position where my only debt is my student loan debt. I have educated myself on finances. I know how to work towards financial freedom. My partner and I are both high earners, so we can have these conversations, and some of it is innate privilege and some of it is earned. But I come onto this platform to share my story so that if you're in a similar position or want to be, you can know how I did it without it all being so secretive. And there might be ebbs and flows, right? Like, I might work part-time for a few years and then full-time again. I don't know what that looks like right now, but I just know that I don't want to be tied to a job, and I also don't want to be stuck literally in a role where maybe management isn't supportive. If something were to change and I wasn't happy in my position, but I had to stay working there because I needed the nonprofit situation in order to get the student loan forgiveness. Like, I don't want that. I want the freedom. I've always like described it as FU money, of like, I want the freedom to say FU, I'm out. But the benefit of public student loan forgiveness is that you only have to pay your minimums, and then your loans are forgiven for 10 years. So you can invest more money, you can save more money towards any financial goals you have. I think it's an amazing program, and I think if you dedicate 10 years of your life to working in a public sector and giving back, that you should have your loans forgiven. I have a lot of opinion on student loans, but I think that this is a good program. It's just not one I wanted to partake in, and so I am aggressively paying off my loans. How exactly am I doing that? Let's talk about the finances of it all. So like I said, I make about $4,000 a month. My living expenses are about $1,300 a month. I live with my partner who owns his home. I'm very open about the fact that I pay him around $900 a month for like to contribute to our living expenses. He bought the home on his own. I contribute that $900 for him to do whatever he wants with as like my rent. In grad school though, I was living on well under $1,300 a month by myself. So I think it's very possible to reduce your living expenses and live inexpensively, whether you have roommates in a low cost of living area. It's very possible to live on $1,300 a month. And I live in Denver, Colorado, which is generally speaking a high cost of living area. But through grad school, I was living on about $1,000 a month. I had 2 roommates in a townhouse in Arvada, and my rent was about $750 a month. And then I was on beans and rice. So it's possible. I pay $2,500 every single month towards my student loans. That's a lie. I pay $2,300 every single month towards my student loans, and then my work pays $200 a month towards my student loans. This is a new benefit that I had for the first time last month. So before that, I was paying $2,500 a month. That leaves me with $200 to $400 left over for any savings or investments that I want to make every single month. So I do save for sinking funds every month, big expenses that I know I'm going to have, like my ski pass and car maintenance. I save a little bit of money every month instead of having something big come up, and I try to invest a little bit. I think I will be adjusting my plan to max out my Roth IRA next year because I currently do not have any money invested in a Roth. I have like $300 from since I started working, and we've talked about how my goal is financial freedom and I have time on my side, so investing early will be good, but I wanted to get my feet under me and get a big dent made in my student loans. So I will shift back to investing in 2025. So right now I invest just kind of what's left over, and my income is a little variable based on if I work a holiday or how many weekend days I work. So there's a little bit of variety. So it's $200 to $400 a month left over for those expenses. So with paying off $2,500 a month, I will pay off my loans in about 5 years. That's assuming that I don't put any extra money towards it and I don't get any raises. That's that. I just have to pay $2,500. So half the time of student loan forgiveness, I will be debt free. I do plan to throw any extra money that I make towards my loans, and so that includes any time that I get a raise, I'll increase my student loan payments. If I make any money on the side, I continue to babysit and do things like that. I'll throw all of that towards my loans. That's just kind of my plan to pay off my debt. One thing that is a big conversation is refinancing your loans. I took most of my loans out from between 2021 and 2024. So my loans have generally low interest rates, and they weren't accruing interest for most of the time that I was in school. If you're a grad student, your loans do accrue interest in school. It's a whole thing that I have issue with. I wasn't accruing interest because of the loan interest and payment pauses from COVID. So I only had a year of interest accruing on my loans, which was a very lucky thing to have. My loans are all federal loans and I will not be refinancing them. Part of the reason is, like I mentioned, I already have relatively low interest loans. I have one loan that's at 7.5% that I am paying off first. The rest of them are all 6% or lower. So I am working on paying off the high interest one first. It's 7.5%. It's just barely over like 7%. It's kind of considered high interest debt. And then once I pay that off, they're all below interest. I could technically get a lower interest from what I've looked at with refinancing to a private loan. I could probably get about 5.5%. I have two loans that are at 5.2% and then the rest are just slightly over. And I do have the protections of having the federal loans. If something horrible were to happen to me, I could go into forbearance. If for some reason things get paused again, I would have that benefit. There are just more protections with my loans being federal where I don't see the benefit of refinancing them because it would only save me like 2 months of paying off the loans with the 2% interest saving. So it's not worth it to me. I'd rather have those protections in place. If something did change and I wanted to go the student loan forgiveness route, I'd rather have that as well. And then there's a little bit of flexibility in my payment plan if I want that as well. So I will not be refinancing my loans. I'm going to leave them federal and just pay them off highest interest first. The biggest thing for me with paying off my loans was that paying off my loans is a priority to me. And everybody talks about you have to make it a priority, you have to make it a priority, but nobody talks about the fact that if you make something a priority, then something else has to not be a priority because you can't have 100 priorities. So for me, paying off my loans is a priority. Getting my nails done is not. For you, getting your nails done might be a priority. And then you just have to know that that $60 a month doesn't get to go to your loans because it's not a priority to you. And that's just the only way that you reframe everything. I think it's very helpful to frame things that way. And you're thinking, man, is this $50 really worth spending? Then you just have to say to yourself, am I willing to prioritize this item over my goals? Whatever it is, whether you're saving for a house, saving your emergency fund, paying off debt, saving for a car, paying off a car, whatever it is the purchase that you're gonna make worth that $50 not going to it? And that means that you're prioritizing that thing over your goal. And the answer might be yes. I've had a few situations. In other videos, I've talked about how I'm traveling to New Orleans to see Taylor Swift in a couple weeks here. And I prioritized that in the moment. I did end up going and working a couple babysitting gigs to pay for that. I was like, I'm willing to prioritize this over one student loan payment. But you do just have to be aware that in order to prioritize something, something else is gonna have to be deprioritized. And this leads to some mindset shifts. The best way that you're gonna be able to throw a lot of money towards your student loans is reducing your expenses so that your income can go that way. If you're interested in picking up a side hustle, maybe waitressing a couple nights a week, that's another great way to earn extra income that you can then put towards your loans or other priorities that you might have. It might not be an immediate thing, but if you're able to reduce your fixed expenses so that you can prioritize what you want to prioritize, that's a great option. And a lot of people talk about how like, oh, they live in an expensive area, you can't afford to reduce your expenses, you just need to make more money. I don't think that's true ever. Like I said, I live in Denver and through grad school, I was living off $1,000 a month. At that point, it was because I had no other option. I couldn't afford anything else. But if you're like me and you're now making quote unquote big girl money and you have more money and technically you can afford the nice apartment by yourself, maybe it's 2 more years with roommates so that you can pay off your loans and then you can really afford it. Again, your priority. Is it a priority to you to live in the fancy apartment downtown with the amenities? Great, then you're not gonna be able to pay off your loans. And that's just fact. If you could make everything happen, I wouldn't be here because I would have made it happen. I am making it happen. I don't buy new clothes, I don't buy new shoes unless I really need them. It's really important to keep up with yourself and not keep up with the Joneses. You don't need the new fancy car if you can't afford it. You don't need to have $1,000 a month car payment if you can't afford it. You don't need the new outfit from Fabletics every month. And it's easy to say, well, that's only $20. $20 10 times is $200. And $200 is a lot of money when you're working towards financial goals. All of that adds up. So I really recommend tracking your expenses to see where they're going. And you can do this right now because odds are that you use some sort of electronic form of payment, whether it's a credit card or Apple Pay. So there is a digital record of what you're spending money on. So go back through the last complete month and write down every single expense you've had and then highlight the ones that you're like, man, that wasn't worth it. And then if there's only like 4 of those, then you're doing great. If everything else is like, yeah, that was worth it, amazing. But if you're looking and you're like, I had Chick-fil-A 3 times in a week, why did I do that? Maybe there's a little bit of a lifestyle change that we can make. Another big like sneaky one is subscriptions. So what we do in our household is right now we have the Netflix, which is ad supported for $5.99 a month. That's the only subscription we have this month. If we want to watch a show that's on another platform, which like we don't watch a lot of TV, we're both very busy outside of work. But if we did want to watch a show that's on another platform, we would stop Netflix for the month and open up that other platform. We don't need to have 4 different platforms going. So those are just like the lifestyle changes that might be beneficial for you to consider if you are trying to pay off loans. And I feel like with social media telling you you need to buy that outfit from Amazon, you need to buy this and that, and you need the skincare routine and you need that, it's really easy to get wrapped up into making a bunch of little purchases, but those little purchases might be hurting your financial goals. So take a step back, reevaluate what's actually important to you, and then prioritize accordingly. So that is why I got into debt, why I'm paying it off early, and how I'm paying it off early. Hopefully this was helpful for you to understand kind of where I'm coming from. You can follow along on this channel to see kind of my journey. Thanks so much for coming. As always, if you subscribe, it really supports my channel, and I'm really grateful to have you here. See you next week.